I had two very interesting things happen to me yesterday. The first was a Zoom conference with Rocco. He lives outside of Toronto. He actually is a train engineer. And he had responded to one of my videos where I had said I wanted someone to help me write my next book. And that next book is going to be all about you. I'm going to ask you, Rocco and I are going to ask you to submit us your stories, your experiences in trading in the market, good, bad, and ugly, and how you have learned and how you have grown to be a better investor and learn from your mistakes. And we want you to, and learn from your successes. And we want you to share that with us and put it in a book form for the tribe. So that was an interesting part of it. But he asked me a question. He said, I understand you retired and you didn't get into YouTube until about a year and a half ago. What did you do in the meantime? I said, well, shortly after we retired, Nita and I just basically traveled the world. We've been all over. And he said, what was the most interesting place you have been? And I said, well, China was certainly an interesting place. I spent a month there. But probably the most interesting experience was in Vietnam. I went to Vietnam for the sole purpose of finding out why we went to Vietnam, why we left 55,000 dead young people in Vietnam. And as it was, in the middle of the trip, we went to a village. We actually got off of our bus and walked through a rice paddy on those little, not bridges, but dividers between the in single file back to the village, had lunch in the village, and then the gentleman who was hosting us, who lived there in the village, who was about my same age, and at the time I was in my early 60s, took us out and we sat under a tree, and he said, you got any questions? And I raised my hand and I said, yeah, why the hell were we in Vietnam fighting a war? And he said, why do you think we were in the war in Vietnam? And I said, well, I think it was to stop communism. He says, how long you been in Vietnam? I said, about 3 weeks. He says, have you seen any communism? I said, no. He says, what have you seen? I said, I've seen a lot of capitalism. Everybody's working on the streets and selling, and you've got a very vibrant economy. He said, yeah. I said, well, then why were we here? And he said to me, you were here to build an army base where you put your first army, where you cleared a 1 mile by 1 mile square and then defoliaged 2 miles beyond that and created a lot of distrust. But you were here to build a military base because you feared China. And then you just got your butts kicked so bad that you went home. Well, I had never heard that before. I had no knowledge of that. And that kind of taught me that it reflected back to a movie I saw many years ago. I think it was called The Greatest Story or something like that. And it was with Jimmy Stewart. And he made a phrase. He said, don't believe anything that you hear and only half of what you see. And I thought that was very, very thoughtful. And so I've proceeded through my life with a questioning attitude. And then yesterday, my son Trent was visiting us, and he's a financial advisor. As many of you know, I'm a retired financial advisor. I sold my financial planning practice. It was the largest within the Ameriprise system of 10,000 advisors, and I sold it to my family, sold it to my son, my daughter, and my nephew, who had all been working for me. And so I invited him yesterday to shoot a video with me. He has a very different attitude about investing than I do. He's very analytical. He's very mathematical. He pointed out to me that the hedge funds of New York City are no longer hiring salesmen. They're hiring mathematicians and people who majored in physics and psychology because they've recognized that the stock market is driven on emotion. It's driven on momentum. And so if they can figure out what you're going to do before you do it and then anticipate what you're doing and what the other masses are doing, they'll get ahead of the game and they'll take you where they want to take you. So he has a different attitude. I'm pretty much wrapped up in the fact that the world's going to change, and I'm keeping my eye on what that change is, and I'm going to invest in the disruptors in the technology. So I shot a video with him. It has to be approved by his broker-dealer's compliance department, so probably won't come out until maybe the earliest Sunday and sometime next week. But he opened my eyes to some things. First of all, you'll see in the video, he is not allowed to mention any stocks names. I have to kind of give cues on that. But he believes there's going to be a major crash. He believes that with the influx of options trading, particularly, and you gave me a very good example on Apple, how Apple was driven up on call options, and then when there was a slight turn down, those call options were all closed out, and we had a cascade. And he is of the belief that that is still in play, and that all the gains that basically have been had from the downside of March up through what would it be, the 1st of September, will collapse, and will go back to the trading channel that Apple, that Amazon, that Google were in before the crash or before the pandemic. So it's a substantial decrease. I've studied it. I spent this whole morning looking at it, and I see the possibilities. Do I believe it? I believe that American Express, that Disney, that the cruise lines, the airlines, I think they'll all go back to their lows. And I think it will happen between now and the end of December. So that's why I'm saying coming soon to a market near you, the 2020 market crash. I believe it's going to be, as he pointed out to me, that the market crashed in March as a result of fear, and fear was of the pandemic and what it was going to do to us individually and what it was going to do to us economically. And the fear was well-founded because many people became unemployed, many restaurants closed, many of your malls are now 50% occupied. As he pointed out, those stores that sold something other than necessities are gone. That the online e-commerce has boomed. We've seen that with Amazon. We've seen that with numerous furniture-type stores, and we've talked about them. And then the other thing then what happened was hope. Hope sprang eternal, and that hope was fueled by substance checks from the government. We saw a lot of that coming into the market through Robinhood and Webull, and we saw the market churning, and we saw the options trades just go out of sight. And as he pointed out to me, that when you buy a stock, there's a limited quantity. There's so many shares, but when you're buying options, there is no limit. You can buy as many as you want, more than there are shares of stock. And when they turn and they kill you. And we've seen that. We've seen the downturns. So there's that was, and then a part of that, and what I have seen is part of this hope factor, is all the IPOs that are coming out and these various means of introducing them, which are feeding the hope factor that, hey, here's a chance for me to get rich real quick. And that's hope. And that hope is then driving us further and further. And we're seeing them just almost on a daily basis now. You don't need to go through Morgan Stanley, and you don't need to go through Goldman Sachs to buy your IPOs, because they bog it down with all the details and all the due diligence. We're just going to put it out there, and you can be a part of it. And we've had Snowflake, and we've had what was it, Open Door. I just did a video on that, and we've had Nikola, and now General Motors stock is down because they didn't do their proper due diligence on Nikola, and then we had Helion, and we had Lemonade, and then we got this nonsense going with Kodak and Workhorse. And so all this is built on that hope cycle, and that's what's driving this up. And now we get into, September, and we plateau out. And there's a question coming, and the question is, how is the presidential election going to affect this? And what if we don't get a vaccine? And wait a second, Dr. Fauci said that even if we do get a vaccine, that not everybody will have it until maybe third quarter of 2021. And then I just heard a lady come on and say, no, our economy, our situation will not be back to what it was until the end of 2022. And we're getting a plateau, and we're getting some worries, and presidential election and a vaccine. And is the government going to give us a relief package? And oh my God, what if Joe Biden gets elected? And what are we going to do with China? What's happening with China and all this bickering about you can't have your websites or your portals and apps in our country, and well, then you can't have them in our country. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of anxiety, and that's why we've seen this pullback. So now the question becomes, what happens next? What happens next? Is Trent right that we're going to see the old staples go right back to the lows they were in March, because fear is now going to replace anxiety and mistrust and all the options and will be called as it starts to trickle down and then it crashes down? I don't know. So in my position, and I want to point out, my position is different than your position. I don't need this money. I'm okay with where I am. I built a retirement account, and I've got enough side gigs producing me enough income from Nita and I to live comfortably and do what we want to do. But I know you don't, and you need to be aware of when the canary falls off the shoulder. And this is my first warning that it could happen. So you need to be diligent. You need to recognize that if you're going to be investing, you don't want to be investing right now in bright, shiny objects. You don't want to be investing in the carnival barker who shows up on Squawk Box and says, "We got a new shiny object for you to buy. It's a new kind of truck, or it's a new kind of insurance, or it's a new kind of real estate disruptor." You don't want to get in. This is not the time to go to the high end of the risk curve. It's now the time to come to the low end of the risk curve. It's the time to say, okay, if this does happen, who's going to survive? Because we got overwhelming debt. And if you're with a new IPO who is bright and shiny but is carrying a buttload of debt on its back, it's going to collapse, because the whole system is just going to suck it down. Now, who's going to come? And everybody will be sucked down, but who's going to pop back up to the surface? The people with the big bank accounts, the people who have been making money since 2009 and building the disruption and building the services and the data that we're going to need to move through this next phase of our civilization. I've gotten several emails. I got a notice today on my watch that Fitbit wants to get my permission to monitor my heart rate on a daily basis, and then compare my heart rate and my age and my weight and my everything about me to millions of other people in the nation and create that data. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to give me my life dashboard. And I need to be with the companies that are going to bring that, because that's what's important now, to make sure that this pandemic never happens again. We've got to make sure we stop global warming. Hell, the western coast of our country is burning. I heard where they're even smelling the smoke in Washington, D.C. This is real. I saw the governor of California say, we were expecting this in 2040. This is 2020. It's much worse than we thought it was. So, again, these are all questions, these are all concerns, these are all anxieties that are weighing on you and I and everybody else in the investing public. And then we have that wolf in Wall Street, who my son described as that young 26-year-old who graduated from Harvard with a master's degree in whatever, and he was hired by a hedge fund, and he's paid $120,000 a year to anticipate what you're going to do and where your stop losses are and where you'll bail, and he makes $120,000 plus 20% of all the profits, and he drives a Tesla and a Lamborghini, and he lives in a penthouse apartment in Manhattan and lives the big life, and he don't give a shit about you and I. He doesn't care if he bankrupts us. He doesn't care if he takes our life savings. So we're on our own. We're on our own, and we're fighting a big battle. And the battle is about to happen. So get away from those bright, shiny objects. Get away from the high end of the risk curve and come back and invest in companies that you know that are going to survive this, because this is going to be a battle. It's going to be you against them. And I don't want you to lose everything that we've built. So, keep up on this. Commit to the best of us investors, and you become one of the best of us investors. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to bestofusinvestors.com. Sign up for my morning letter. If you get some other website and you can't find it, www.bestofusinvestors.com. You'll find it there. Sign up for the letter. Then in the letter, you're going to see a link to our Discord. In our Discord, we share even more information. We have classes, so you understand what the difference of a Roth IRA is to a traditional IRA, and you understand what a SEP is. And then we have classes on buying options. Gabe is doing a phenomenal job on that. Drew has built this thing, and this is for you. It is for you so you can better your life, so that you can create wealth within your family that you can pass on, and you can know what the hell you're doing. We're facing a real disaster that some people are not going to survive. I don't want you to be part of the casualties.